Welcome to my guide for visiting London. So then, I've lived near London since I was born and I visit London all the time, so I feel I'm qualified enough to make this guide. So this guide is for people who've never been to London before, and this guide will pretty much tell you what it's like to visit London. So let's get started. London. It is a massive city. It's not like a regular city like other cities. It's like a whole region in the United Kingdom. It is so big. Now I go in London all the time and I'm the sort of person that likes to explore everywhere, and not even I have seen all of it yet. There's still bits of it I've never seen, so that should give you an idea of how big it is. So let's start off with getting in. Now getting into London, well, the United Kingdom is in the free movement zone of the United Kingdom and Ireland. It is not in the Schengen zone, thanks to the stupid right-wing twat politicians. There's lots of politics involved here, but pretty much at the moment we've got a right-wing government and there's lots of right-wing propaganda. If you're in the EU, you can obviously come into the United Kingdom, but other places it can get a bit more complicated, and 51% of the population of the United Kingdom are closet racists. Now closet racist means people won't be openly racist, but a lot of people have a dislike of immigrants, and thanks to the simple-mindedness of a lot of people, I don't know all the rules, but I know it can be complicated for people outside the EU to get into the United Kingdom, but nevertheless it's still worth persisting with, because London is a really great place to visit. So in getting into London, there are several main airports. Gatwick Airport to the south, Stansted Airport and Luton Airport, which are probably the best ways to come in on cheap flights. But there's also Heathrow Airport for overpriced flights. All of these airports have railway links into London, but sadly only Heathrow is inside the travel card zone. Everywhere else will be a bit more expensive. Alternatively, by train, if you're outside of the travel card zone, fares are really overpriced. Travel card zone itself is actually reasonable, but if you're outside of it, you will have to pay quite a lot to get in. Unless you're on advanced tickets, then you're tied to a certain train and it gets even more complicated. Alternatively, there is the Eurostar to get into London, but that is even more overpriced. The other way is by boat and then drive in, but that's pretty overpriced as well. Probably the best way to get to London is cheap flight Ryanair or EasyJet if you can find a cheap deal, but Ryanair is probably the easiest way. Get us to Stansted Airport, then bus or train into London. That's probably the easiest way to get in. Next thing, things to see in London. So then, what is there to see in London? Well, I'm going to go by my places to see, which is actually a bit different to what most people would say, but as someone who's lived near London since I was born, I'm going to list to you now the best things to do and see while you're in London. And number one, obviously, the best thing in London is, of course, the Underground. The Underground is amazing. It is one of the best transport systems in the entire world. There's loads of lines, and what makes it really interesting, there's more to it than just getting to where you want to go, because every single line of the Underground has its own character to it. You've got the Bakerloo line with the 1972 trains, which has a slightly older feel. The Victoria line, really modern, has train every 2 minutes, but in the rush hour, a train every 90 seconds. It's just amazing. Then you've got the Central line, which has a very old automation system, and it's got its DC pulsing. It has its own character to it. Then you've got the Circle line, Surface lines, which are a bit more boring. You've also got the Jubilee line with its platform doors, which is very modern. Then you've got the Docklands Light Railway, and the Docklands Light Railway is an automated train. Although its automation isn't as good as the French VAL system, it's still really interesting to go on. Plus, as well as that, there's so many different methods of transport in London, and all of them are really interesting to go on. So, what else is there to see in London? Well, a lot of people would tell you about all of the various museums. You've got British Museum, Science Museum, Natural History Museum, and millions of museums. I've been to some of these museums. They're all right. If your tourist comes to London, you might want to see them, but I don't think they're necessarily that interesting, to be honest. Although if you haven't seen them before, you might as well go to them. The most interesting one is the Science Museum, simply because the Science Museum is the only museum in London which is actually fun to go to. And there's lots of interesting things in the Science Museum, so if you want to go to a museum, make sure you go to the Science Museum rather than one of the others. And so, what else is there to see in London? Well, of course, there's central London itself. So you've got Oxford Circus, Tottenham Court Road, Piccadilly Circus, and that's like a central main area of London. Then you've got Trafalgar Square, where there's often events and stuff going on, and those are like the main central places to see. But as well as that, you've also got loads of places around London which are really worth going to, such as Croydon down to the south, and you've got Bromley, and there's loads of other places around London within the travel card zone which are really worth visiting to. Don't just limit yourself to the centre if you do come to London. Another place really worth going to is Canary Wharf, although sadly you can't get up the towers because they're all posh twats in those towers, but nevertheless the Canary Wharf area is very, very interesting. There's a massive underground shopping centre with loads of interconnecting passages. It's a really nice place to go and visit. And also, if you want to do shopping, there's also the two Westfields. To the west you've got Westfield throughout the city, and to the east you've got Westfield Stratford, and these are really nice and interesting shopping centres. Another place to visit in London is the Olympic Park. It's a really nice open space and it's really interesting and it's genuinely just a nice place to visit. And in the Olympic Park you've got the Olympic swimming pool, which is an absolutely amazing building and an awesome place to take a swim in. Also, another place to visit in London, if you like posh twats, is to go to Knightsbridge and visit Harrods and have a laugh at how stupidly overpriced all of the stuff is there. Another place in London you might like to go is Bank. Bank has loads of tall towers, and Sushi Samba, if you persuade the security outside you're going up to visit a restaurant, you might be able to sneak a ride in their glass lifts. Also, there's the Shard Tower at London Bridge. If you're able to convince security that you're a posh person and you're staying there, you might be able to sneak past them and take a swim in the Shard swimming pool with amazing views across London. So then, what shouldn't you visit when you go to London? And of course, the place I have to mention here, the place you should not visit if you go to London, is Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace is the most stupid piece of crap there is in London. It is just there for the tourists. The entire royal family pretty much only exist for the tourists, because for some stupid reason the tourists like to come in because of the royal family, and I think that's stupid. I personally find it insulting that tourists come to London to see Buckingham Palace. You can't even really see it that well, you just stand around the outside full of tourists. It's not worth visiting, and it does not represent what London is actually like. So if you want to see what London's actually like, see all the interesting different bits to it, but don't go to Buckingham Palace. And also the Houses of Parliament as well, you can't go into it, you can only see it from the outside, and it's also not worth going to. Next thing, getting around London. And as I've obviously just mentioned, of course the best way to get around London is the Underground, and I've already told you what the Underground's like. It's completely awesome and by far the best way to get around London. There's also buses, but I recommend you don't take a bus in the centre of London. Only further outside of London is it worth taking a bus, as in the very centre the buses are very slow. Another method of transportation in London is the boats. Although these are not part of the travel card zone, so you do have to pay a bit to go on them, but London has a very interesting high-speed boat system. The boats go 30 miles an hour, which is very fast for a boat, and they're also very fun to go on. So if you want to see London the interesting way, make sure you go by boat, and don't just do the centre bit of London by boat, because the boats have to go slow in that bit because of the speed limit. Make sure you go down to Canary Wharf and Greenwich on the boat, because then you get a nice high-speed boat ride. And also, if you're going by boats, make sure you go on the proper boats, the Thames Clippers. Don't go on any of those stupid tourist boats, because they're slow and boring and just there for tourists. Also, with getting around London, one obvious thing which I should say, which might not be obvious if you don't know London, do not drive into the centre of London. That is an absolutely stupid thing to do. The only people that drive into the centre of London are idiots and posh twats who think they're better than everyone else. You have to pay £10 to drive into the centre of London. You can't park anywhere unless you pay a massive amount, which will be £20, £30 or even more. So it's ridiculously expensive and stupid. No one should be driving into the centre of London. So next thing, where should you eat when you're in London? Because obviously there's a lot of different places to eat, but most places in London to eat are very overpriced, and you do have to sort of know where you're going. There's a lot of restaurants just selling to tourists, and any place that looks like it's obviously for tourists you should avoid, because it will be overpriced. Also avoid any cafes in museums or general areas that people congregate, such as stations, tourist spots or anything, because these cafes will all be very overpriced. If you want to eat something, I personally recommend McDonald's, simply because McDonald's is the only place that is not overpriced, and the quality of food in the United Kingdom in McDonald's is pretty reasonable. And also in the United Kingdom, McDonald's actually has quite a wide selection of food, more so than other McDonald's in other places in the world, so it doesn't feel as badly like you're eating fast food all the time. Also for eating, I would also recommend Tesco's and Sainsbury's, because they do sandwiches which are fairly cheap, and they just do general food that's not overpriced. And also one of the best things to buy in London is milk, because the shops do not profit on milk. For some reason they sell it really cheap. You get 45p for a half litre of milk, which is actually cheaper than water. Which brings me on to the next subject. There's a lot of places in London selling very overpriced water. There's no need to buy it. Water shouldn't be overpriced. If you want water, either buy it from Tesco's or Sainsbury's where it'll be cheap, or take around a water bottle with you and fill it up whenever you get the chance. Even ask places, when you see an overpriced cafe, don't be embarrassed to go up to the counter and ask them to refill your water bottle, because often they will do, and then you get free water, which is obviously much better than paying for overpriced water. And now let's go on to things you shouldn't do in London. And one of the biggest things that annoys Londoners that tourists do is getting in the way, pretty much. Most people in London don't mind the tourists, but when tourists get in your way, it's really annoying. So if you're a tourist, make sure you stand to the side when you stop to look at stuff. And when you're on the underground and if you're lost, don't stand in the middle of the passage, and make sure you stand on the standing side of the escalator and only go to across to the walking side if you want to overtake someone. Next thing, crime in London. Now, I've been to other cities in the world which are supposedly low crime, such as Paris, and I've witnessed lots of crimes there. A lot of pickpocketing and a lot of people trying to demand money of tourists. But for some reason, London has a reputation of being a bit dodgy when it comes to crime. And that reputation, I feel, is completely wrong. Because I've been to London pretty much all the time. And the number one main crime you'll find in London is chav crimes. So you get chavs walking about looking for a fight. And some of these chavs will, might say something to you to try and provoke you to say something back. Then they'll get into a fight with you. If a chav tries to provoke you, just ignore them. Apart from chavs being chavs, there isn't really much other crimes in London. I've been to London since I was born, and I've never witnessed any pickpocketing in London. Despite some of the guys saying there's pickpocketing, I've never seen any, and I'm in London all the time. The other crimes you get in London is drunk people. You do get a lot of drunk people about looking for fights, and that is a bit typical of London when late in the evening. But long as you just avoid the drunk people and don't say anything to them, you'll be perfectly fine. The main crime I feel in London is overpriced shops, such as a lot of cafes selling overpriced teas and coffees, or overpriced water, or some of the absolutely awful tourist souvenir shops. You get them around Piccadilly Circus and other central London places selling absolute rubbish tat to tourists at completely ridiculous prices. Oh yeah, and another thing I think is a bit of a crime is a lot of places you have to pay to go to the toilet, which is something I just disagree with. But don't fall for these places. If you see one place charging you to go for a toilet, if you look around a bit thoroughly, you'll often find somewhere it doesn't charge. So never pay to go to the toilet. That's a complete con. Another thing you should know in London is that people do not have the right to tell you what you can and can't do. And a lot of the time you see people without authority trying to boss you about, such as security guards in shopping centres either trying to tell you where to go or telling you can't take pictures, or sometimes very occasionally security outside a shop where it's a posh shop trying to move people out of the way of their shop and it's public land. You do not have to listen to these people. Nobody, apart from police or on the underground, obviously the underground stuff, but apart from that, nobody can tell you what to do in London. England is the land of the free. Everyone in England is a free person. If any security guard tries to tell you you can't take pictures or you have to move somewhere, don't listen to them. They have no right to do this, and they also have no right to detain you. Another thing is, compared to a lot of other countries where you have to cross the road at designated points and only on the green man, in England you can cross the road wherever you like. And that's pretty much my guide to London. I hope you enjoyed this guide, and I hope this guide has encouraged you to want to visit London, because it's a very nice place to visit. Also, one other thing, if you really want to experience London properly, and by that I mean not experiencing the tourist shit, but actually experiencing proper London, one thing I'd really recommend is just going out on a train to a housing estate such as Thamesmead, or like a big housing estate, and just having a look of what London's really like. Because get away from the tourist stuff, have a look at real London, and that is a far better, more genuine experience for you than going to any tourist site in London. And I've just realised I've forgotten one really important thing a guide to a city needs: what hotel you should stay at, and I don't believe I forgot that. So what hotel should you stay at in London? Well, I'd recommend the cheapest. There's no point really going for anything expensive. The more expensive hotels might feel a bit more luxury, but overall it's just a hotel, and the cheapest hotels such as Premier Inns or even cheaper ones are perfectly adequate. So I'd recommend, if you're staying in London, just go for wherever you find cheapest really. Posh hotels are not really worth the money.